Welcome them as they get in. And thank you for starting the live stream stuff. So welcome everybody to the Community Center Select Steering Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. We'll call this meeting to order at 3:03 p.m. And the first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I don't believe we have any late items today, do we?
I do not.
Okay, great. So the recommendation is that the committee approve the agenda for the February 14th, 2024 meeting. Can I have a mover for that? Moved by our CAO, seconded by, don't everybody jump at once, to approve the agenda, seconded by Jillian. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye, opposed, and that carries. Moving on to item 2.1, adoption of the minutes of the December 18th, 2023 Community Center Select Steering Committee meeting. Are there any changes or additions to the minutes? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion that the minutes of the committee meeting held December 18th, 2023 be adopted.
I'll move that.
Moved by Liam, seconded by me or Jillian. I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Opposed, and that carries. Section 3, public comments. Do we have any public comments today?
I only have this possible public comment by Alan Morse, or not. That was kidding. I have nothing else.
No,
Okay.
I told him he couldn't say anything.
Okay. I have nothing else.
Right. I don't know if we take a public comment from someone in the middle of driving anyways.
Ah, good point.
And moving on to section 4, updates 4.1, a construction update. So I will hand it over to our Chief Administrative Officer and our Manager of Recreation for construction updates.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Well, essentially, you can, most of you will have seen the project as you drive up or down Trunk Road Hill, and most of you will probably still be fielding questions about why the roof is not on. So I'm going to address that first. And we've talked about this a bit in the past, so I hope I'm not repeating myself, but essentially there is a firm direction to the builder to now install the roof. And before any metal roofing can go on, though, we want to be absolutely certain that there's been no degradation of the roofing material that's currently on there. So that's the vapor barrier and the insulation underneath that. And so we did have a third-party roof inspection recently, and they did identify some concerns with some areas of the roof mostly where there's protrusions through the roof. And so that's going to result in those areas being investigated further and likely having those areas cut out and the insulation underneath removed and replaced. But from that inspection, we were also told that the larger areas of the roof are likely fine, but we want to make sure that a more thorough investigation is completed before any metal goes on. And so while it has taken much longer than anybody would want, I do have confidence that when it does go on, it will be done correctly, and it will be done in a way that ensures that any of the materials underneath are not compromised. And so I still feel confident that we'll end up with a good product there. Inside the building, though, there's a lot of positive work moving forward. It's really taking full shape with a lot of the window glazings being installed. The drywall and mudding is mostly complete in all sections. The office section is already had first coat of paint. And so when you're in the building, you can really get a sense and feel for all the individual spaces. And The electrical, mechanical, and plumbing is all wrapping up nicely. There's a substantial amount of work that's still required in the exterior of the building around landscaping, and that'll likely be the last push as the building nears completion. But a large chunk of work is occurring right now in the northern section of the project where the septic field is, and so there's quite a bit of civil work happening in the back, as well as the installation of the standby generator and the propane tank that will support the building in the event of an emergency or power outage, and so that we can also operate the facility as a recovery center if necessary. And so again, well, nobody's happy that there's no roof on. I am confident that when we do get it on, hopefully in the coming weeks, that it'll be done correctly. That's it for my construction update. Unless Jillian has anything that she would like to add.
Maybe just a fun little piece to add on that related to the landscaping, that the intention has always been to use the boulders that emerged from the excavation and blasting process, to use those boulders both to frame the western edge of the courtyard as it meets the bluff, and also as some feature elements in the front of the building. So that the time came that we were actually going around the site and selecting those boulders and where they would be placed. So that was kind of a fun piece to do, and consider sort of rock families and how they look together in the placement and how they would work, and sort of to tell the story of that integration of site to landscape, or of the building to the site, sorry. Yeah. And maybe we could pause for questions before moving on to the safety markings piece.
Yes, absolutely. Any questions for our CAO on construction at all? I suppose my only question, and just to get it into the public record, is the term in coming weeks we'll see the roof go on. I'm wondering if there's a timeline, or if the roof will affect the timeline of the construction of the community center, and what that looks like.
The roof itself isn't on the critical path, which might sound a bit concerning to some, but it's actually not impacting the overall project timeline. I don't have a definitive date of when we can expect to see roofers putting that roof on. I do want a thorough inspection of the existing material before any roofing goes on, so that has yet to take place, and I don't think that's been scheduled yet. And so we need to understand the full extent of what kind of replacement or rework needs to be conducted of the existing material before we can then schedule well, not we, before the builder then schedules the actual roof to go on. So it's in the builder's hands to then ensure that work gets completed. In terms of schedule itself, we're still operating on the December construction schedule, which identified a project handover date of the end of April. But we know that is not realistic, and that we are waiting for an updated schedule. I hope to receive that this week or early next week, which would then identify what the new handover date would be, and I would anticipate that it'll be pushed out by at least 1 month, probably to the end of May.
Okay. Thank you. And seeing no further questions, I'll move on to the public art call for safety markings on glass, and over to you, Jillian.
So you probably will recall that I mentioned this before, the idea of having this call out to artists to submit digital art that could be used for these safety markings for all of the floor to ceiling glass in the building, whether that's exterior or purely interior glazing. So that went out with the Public Art Advisory Committee. We put that together and sent that call out. So it closed on Sunday evening. And it's pretty exciting. There's been 9 Bowen artists who have submitted their work for consideration in this. So there's some great options for the jury to choose from. So the jury is meeting on Friday to select winners of this. And so we're still working with the architect and the vendor to identify how many winners we can have and how can we choose which art goes in which locations. So the great news is that there's beautiful Bowen work to choose from. So I think we'll have a really lovely product that's very Bowen based and local. So it'll be a fun story to tell with this work.
Great. That's exciting, and I definitely appreciate the uptake from the community on it. So it's nice to have choices. And I'll look to the committee for any questions. Seeing none, we'll move on to new business 5.1, and it's also back at you here, Jillian. Community center room names.
Thank you.
Sorry, we have the
Oh, right. Sorry, fundraising update.
My apologies. I jumped over. It's been a long day, and I've got a kindergartner running around in my background here. So 4.2 fundraising update. I'll turn it over to our fundraising coordinator and our manager of recreation services.
Thank you. We are looking forward to having a presentation with you start shortly, but I just want to mention that as we speed towards the completion of our construction project, we continue to receive support and contributions from the community, for which we are, of course, very grateful. Donations and contributions have moved us closer to hitting our fundraising targets and meeting the project budget of $18.7 million. We do anticipate additional donations coming in from end of project pledges, coupled with other funding sources that will cover the current $1.46 million shortfall. So we are tremendously thankful, of course, to all those who have contributed to date. And there is still time for members of the public to add their names to the hundreds of islanders who have already given so generously. But the time is running short to meet the deadline to be included on the donor recognition display, which will be featured prominently in the community center. And so you'll hear about that shortly. And we are moving toward the deadline to add names by the end of March, which is when fabrication of the display will get underway. So as well, an opportunity to sponsor a seat in the Performing Arts Auditorium will be ongoing, but doing so sooner rather than later if you'd like the plaque commemorating the sponsorship to be added before the curtains drop at the Performing Arts Auditorium. The time is now. So we encourage those donors who are still considering to make it happen probably sooner rather than later. We're going to move now to this presentation. I believe we have a PowerPoint, or I guess it's a PDF that we'd like to share. Jillian, are you going to pull that up? Or Steph? There we go. Great. So we are really excited to be bringing this forward to you. This presentation has been put together by our team, and Julie and I will lead it. However, members of the team, Janet, Jamie, want to jump in at any time, that would be great. And of course, Shelley as well. So, so in addition to an update on where we're at with the Donor Recognition Initiative, we are also going to be seeking your guidance in terms of moving forward with next steps. Go to the next screen, please. So just a review, this is all very familiar to you, I'm sure. The purpose of this project, of course, is to recognize and honor our donors. The content will include, at this point, we're around 150 names, donors and stakeholders who have contributed a minimum of $200, those cash donations to the Capitol Building Project. There's a little asterisk there that references that we will also be recognizing, of course, our federal government and provincial governments supporters as well as the Community Foundation, who has given generously. And you may recall that there was a budget set of $15,000 for this initiative. Next slide, please. Again, I think you're quite familiar with the placement of this display. It will be in the gallery lounge, and it will be installed across these two panels that you see. Moving ahead, so just taking a look at our process and timeline, some of the clarity around all of this. So what we've completed to date, of course, is that we have selected Cornerstone signage and design. We've been working with them. They've come over to Bowen Island to view the space. They've also developed a concept and timeline, which we are responding to now and presenting as a result of. Upcoming is, of course, let's move to today's date. We're going to be showing you this concept, asking you for some guidance, and hopefully we'll be moving forward with this draft concept. At that point, Cornerstone will pick it up and actually prepare a full design, which will return to you for review and approval. And then we'll need to go into fabrication in March and April so that we will be able to install it in time for the opening. I just want to say that our vendor has been working really hard to ensure strict adherence to our budget, and has provided a concept that will both serve us well in terms of acknowledging donors while keeping our costs to a minimum. So as I said, we're going to kind of go into two stages here. We're going to walk you through the concept to ensure you have a clear sense of what is being proposed. Once that is gained, and we're absolutely welcoming questions at any point, then we would like some assistance determining a number of details on components that the vendor will need in order to move forward with the design. And again, just stressing that you will be able to see the design in the next round. There you go. So we're going to start with just talking about key components. And I know it's hard to talk about them, but we promise we'll show them to you. Just hold on one sec. So the key components of our concept are the artistic element and the focal point in the building, of course, very important. We would like to include a title, maybe the name of the project or some other wording around that. There will be included a background mural, and this is indicated combination of a watercolor abstract, a statement panel, which will really be highlighting the purpose of this project and its impact on our community. Then we'll go into, of course, the list of names, very, very important part, and they will be groups, probably according to donation levels, and they will be displayed in what they're suggesting, promoting, or proposing as these 3D acrylic shapes. So let's go to the next one. We have some visuals for you. Jillian, did you want to jump in at this point?
Sure. Thank you. This is just to show the inspiration, the color design that will be included through it is inspired by the same elements of the rest of the building. What you're seeing on this slide on the left are the natural elements of the site that are the color inspiration for the entire building. And then on the right, the top, that's showing the acoustic baffles that are suspended from the ceiling in the living room. This is the closest adjacent color to the donor wall. So, and you can see the material choices there in the other image. So those are the fabrics that'll be used to wrap those acoustic baffles suspended. So again, that's that color inspiration. So you got to bear with us a little bit and see what we're trying to see. And we'll go through this and try and create this understanding of it. So that's why we wanted to talk through those elements before we try and look at how they're all put together. So if you start imagining this from the deepest element of the display, that will be that background image that's that sort of abstract. And I'm going to go through each element of this individually after we show this first one, but just to see it all together. And I know you've all seen the agenda package, so you've all seen it anyway, what's in here. But so on top of that background is where it's mounted. These donor names are mounted in these acrylic shapes. The title is mounted on top of that background mural. The statement panel is also mounted on it, and the line art as well. Now, Obviously, we would not put a statement panel on top of the chosen line art. This is just here because the initial location where they suggested the statement panel, we didn't like fully, because we want to have it on that side, and the art will be placed in a complementary way. So going through these different elements, the background is intended to be representative of where we are in an abstract way. It's not hugely defining. It's just setting the stage for the other elements that are mounted upon it. So these are example images that he was showing us for it. And so you can see, of course, the image on the bottom left, of course, it's more detailed than the others. And so this is one of these places that as we get to the end, if you all say to us, actually, we really love that greater bit of detail, then we can work with that, or we can stay quite abstract in it so that it really highlights the other elements.
And just to add there that we, of course, would be incorporating things that are reflective of our own natural landscape. So if it is the mountains, ocean, the trees, arbutus, would clearly be, yeah, make sense for Bowen Island.
Mm-hmm. So the statement panel, as Jacqueline was saying, this is our only place where we're saying anything on this, and this is all about why this site is so important to Bowen Islanders, this facility rather. And when we say this panel could include government and other grant acknowledgements, that's one suggestion. It also, those pieces could be pulled out into one of those unique donor shapes, if that is a strong preference of this group. We could go that way too, but it would fit nicely in the statement panel. So the image on the left with the panda from TELUS, that's sort of an example of what this sort of thing would look like. So it's mounted on that acrylic, which is then mounted on the background mural of the overall display. So this is where the donor names would be, and to give a bit of a representation there of what it would look like. So these would be different sizes. These are not the exact shapes that we'd be looking at. This is just to show you the concept. And as Jacqueline was saying, the names would be arranged by groups representing the donation range, but not necessarily with the donor amount ranges. So we wouldn't say everybody in the 200 to 1,000 category is in this shape. We would just use some visual distinction to carry weight. So it's current best practice and trends in donor recognition that you don't actually state those dollar amounts in those ranges. And Shelley can speak more to that if anybody wishes to have more on that. So it just seems to be a strong donor preference now to not actually have that exact dollar amount. So these 3D shapes, they would be opaque in the end, so they're not actually, you're not seeing the image of the mural through them. They stand out as unique shapes. And one of the best benefits of doing it in this way is that each one of those individual shapes can be replaced when we have additional names to add to them. So it's not a matter of replacing like the entire wall. So maybe we would decide that once a year we want to update those names, and we could do that easily with this format. The 3D line art is a way of adding dimensionality and interest to the exhibit in a way that is also reflective of the flora or fauna of the island that is valuable or important to Bowen Islanders. So these are entirely artistic elements of it, and it's one of the pieces that we'd like to come back to a little bit at the end, and what are the choices potentially of this committee in terms of species that we might want to represent. So the two images at the bottom are to show how this would be. So this is all fabricated in metal that's raised and mounted. So it is that 3D element on it. But as you can see with the images of the hummingbird and the heron on the left, you can see color components to it that are highlighting these images. So that color would actually be on the background mural, but it's designed in a way so that it comes through and complements the line art imagery. This is where we come to the working part, where we all have to do some work here if everybody's up for that. But first, let's open it up for some questions and comments, if you like, before we go further.
Yeah, and Julie, maybe just go back to that other slide that shows the concept with the different components. So I just, wondering if there's any questions regarding any of the components specifically or clarification on how they might look. I think Jamie has a question.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know where my hand raise thing is, so I'm just putting my hand up. Just the background imagery, have like the mural and the line drawings. Have you reached out to any local artists to create that, or is this just going to be clip art, or what the cornerstone's going to suggest? One of my questions is, can we use some of the designs that are going to be on the glass? The submissions that you've received, maybe to bring some consistency from what's on the glass and what's on the background of this?
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, interesting question. We had not reached out to local artists for this. The budget's really tight for this. We might be able to look at if some of the work, the digital work would work on this. I'm not sure if they would work because all the safety marking pieces were developed as 4-inch diameter circle art. So I'm
just a little, maybe we'll hear from the artist on the item that says, why didn't you choose local art as the background as opposed to clip art, or what Cornerstone recommends? That's all. And I know it's kind of late in the game. But I'm just putting it out there.
All right, I'll just speak in terms from Cornerstone's proposal on this. So, two things again, they are trying to keep within our budget. So there is no additional money to pay commissions to artists, that type of thing. They also will be fabricating this in-house. And I don't think although they're using very, as we go to some of the line art, they're very sparse, let's say, and they're going to be augmenting them through the fabrication that they're adding on to, so that it complements whatever images they are using. So they would be modifying whatever we were using. So again, that would have to, if you were using artist work, I think there would have to be a lot of interaction in terms of what the artist would agree or approve in terms of how their work's being used. So I think that that they are looking at it from the simplest way to approach it, that would of course not incur additional costs of time and money. So I think there's some limitations in terms of what we can choose there.
I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Morse.
Is there some way to design the things that are going to have the names on them, either when you're first doing them, so we don't have to make whole new ones, but we can just add some names? So if there's enough space for 20 names, then in the first go around only put on 10. So you just have to letter on some more names rather than, redo a whole new thing, which will keep the ongoing cost down.
I think we can ask about that, about building. I'm questioning, I'm trying to remember. I think it was back printed on the back of the acrylic, how it's done. So if I'm not positive if you can, with that manufacturing method, I'm not positive if you could then print something else onto it.
I guess I
think-
was thinking of actually physically doing it, not, you know, acrylic on acrylic, sort of
Mhm.
Janet's nice
Yeah.
handwriting or something.
And we can explore that further. And I think
Mhm.
once we see the
Is you going-
design, there'll be a clear understanding of actually how that would work.
Thank you. I see Rob with a question or comment. We can't hear you, Rob, just in case you are speaking.
He's not on mute from what I can see.
Yeah.
Oh, there he's muted himself now. Now he's gone.
No, he
Now he's there.
bumped back down in my screen here.
I'm
So Rob, if
asking
you
him to unmute.
and it looks like he's unmuted.
Rob, do you
but
want to try typing in the chat?
In the meantime, I'm going to move.
I can keep an eye on the chat.
Yeah, go ahead, Jillian.
So what we would love to discuss today so that we can, if this is a proposal that
Sorry, Jillian. So sorry. Rob has
okay.
typed refer to background as integrated graphic design rather
Okay.
than art or mural. That's a
Excellent
suggestion.
idea. Excellent suggestion. Thanks, Rob. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
You wouldn't believe how often we talked about how do we describe these acrylic shapes?
Yeah.
We call them blobs or yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you, art person.
Yeah. So in the hopeful anticipation that this is indeed a concept that this committee approves us to move forward with, we would like to have a little bit of a conversation around and choose a title and work a little bit on the statement panel and get some sense of preferred line art images to use. And so we have a couple of suggestions up there of titles, but of course this is all available to edit.
Yeah, so simply community building, community, or just the title of the facility itself, Bone Island Community Center. So any thoughts anyway would be really appreciated.
I don't like the first one. It doesn't sound right. Community building community. It's not a name, it's a statement.
Mhm.
Schools
Mhm.
Bone Island Community Center or Bone Island Community or civic buildings, or I don't know. We've
Rather
been
see a
calling
title.
it community center in all our literature, right?
Mhm.
Right. Any other comments? On the flip side, I don't mind community building community. I think it's particularly for a donor wall. I think it speaks more towards what's actually happening. I have a feeling that when people get inside the building, there's going to be no mistake that they're in the Bone Island Community Center. So I don't know if we need a title inside the building. However, I'm happy to go either way.
So where's the statement panel going to go?
The statement, it'll be moved around according to which line art we choose and how that works with the integrated background art.
And can are we moving on to the statement panel? Because I just want to mention that what we have proposed here on the statement panel wording, it's drafted wording that has references to the vision statement in the memorandum of understanding with the hearth. And it is also echoed, sorry, in the value statements the Joint Management Committee is drafting. So that's where these words were pulled from.
But do we need a title? Can we just put the statement panel across, wording stretched across the top?
I think we need to, you know, have something that delineates what this is like.
Well, it's kind of obvious it's a donor recognition wall, and if it says the Bowen Island Community Center in slightly larger letters is the hub of the island, a place where islanders gather, then, you know, you're not messing up your artwork with something that's going to float around.
There's concern about legibility or readability. If it was up too high, the statement panel was up too high. I think we did discuss that a little bit in terms of where it would be best, be most visually accessible. I think, Shelley, did you have a comment on any of that?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that indeed the statement panel, the text is not so large that you would be able to see it from a distance. It is meant to be something that you use to engage people with the display as a whole. So it would bring people close, would be at eyesight, and we'd also have to consider that it's accessible for everybody. So that one's hard to move up any further than kind of where it's positioned. And I understand that Cornerstone would include the statement as part of the overall aesthetic of the wall. So it will stand out appropriately. It won't be jarring and just placed randomly.
I see Liam looking. Sorry, Liam, did you had a hand up there, and then I see Janet with her hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was going to say that I too like community building community. I mean, this is really recognizing the individuals who have generously contributed funds to support the project. So they've really helped build this community center. And so I really like that message that brings. And I think it's the really recognizing their contributions. I mean, that's what this is, a donor recognition wall. So I quite like the community building community.
Thank you. Over to you, Janet.
Just to echo what Liam said, is for the title is to be less about the branding and what we've been through, and less about this being a civic building or a municipal building, or the Bowen Island Community Center kind of, which is very municipal kind of language, and to really have this as a reflection of what the community did to make this happen. And that's for the title.
Thank you. My only other comment and wondering just around the statement panel is I do like the language on it. I can see where it's bold language from the terms of reference. I think it speaks eloquently to what the community center is. I do appreciate there is the piece there around acknowledging the government and grant acknowledgement. I do wonder whether it may be worthwhile in this section, given that we're talking about what the community center is and how it's going to be used, whether there should be an Indigenous acknowledgement in there as well. What the thoughts are of the folks who put this together on that idea?
Sorry,
Yeah.
what was that? What acknowledgement?
Indigenous acknowledgement, land acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a policy of the municipality in terms of presentation of visual, whether it's your buildings or identifying
There's no
spaces
formal,
assigned?
right, no formal policy, sort of, I mean, because we don't have a ton of public buildings, so that's not a policy that really exists. I do see Shelley with your hand up there if you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, I think it's a really good consideration. Donor walls have not, and I've not seen an example where there has been it's been used to also provide the Indigenous recognition of where it is. I might suggest that it is a good thing to consider at a separate place within the building
Okay.
versus this specific piece trying to be all things.
Right. So maybe we can just send that back to staff for now to consider where in the building something like that might be appropriate. If that makes sense. I see Julie nodding her head. Okay, great.
Yeah. Just making a note of that.
Any other comments, preferences? I also see that we have should we include the opening date, preferred line art images. So if there's pieces or preferences here that committee members have that they'd like to speak to, I think. See Jillian on the edge of her seat, so she's all ears.
Well, because I want to keep moving with this, yeah.
Right. Right. I don't see any comments. I mean, I think, whether it's a heron, I like herons, but it's not all about me, but I think whether it's a heron, an orca, or an arbutus, I think any of those images are pretty classically Bowen Island. So I've got no problem with the artistic vision of any of those.
Okay.
No suggestions for, sorry, go ahead, Jillian.
No, I was saying, don't see strong preferences emerging, so.
Right.
That's good.
I noticed that the slug isn't on that list.
That was going to be my comment. Nobody was
Okay.
really pushing for the slug. Okay, we're good.
Okay.
We had discussed the brand mascots, our municipal brand mascots, and chose not to use them as imagery in this because this panel will undoubtedly outlast the brand
Right.
on the site. So
no, and I think it's great to move away from that, and it creates some differentiation on a display like this.
right. And as Janet was saying, this is about the full community. It's not about the municipal brand.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Getty.
Hi. First of all, apologies for being late. Secondly, I like all three. So it's land, water, and air. And those three in particular, I think, are really good for Bowen. So thanks.
So I just need to ask if we move forward with community building community, do we have a vote here? I heard more towards that than Bowen Island Community Center. Is that?
Yeah, we need to make a decision.
Yeah.
Sure. So we can just do a straw poll. I think if whoever's in favor of community building community, if you can just put your hand up, and we can do something general. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And who's in favor of just Bowen Island Community Center? Put your hand up. 1. Okay. So it looks like the gravity moves more towards community building community.
Okay.
I've got Jamie's got her hand up now. Was that for the vote, Jamie, or comment?
Oh, look at that. My hand went up. I didn't mean that. No, I was just voting for the Bowen Island Community Center. I just wanted to clarify that the other title was Community Building Community. Is that the title of, that's what you're going to call the building?
No,
Oh,
No.
Donor wall.
No,
this is the
just
donor
the
wall.
donor wall.
okay.
The
I get it.
building is the Bowen Island Community Center.
Got it.
That's going to be signage outside.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Any other pieces you need on this, Jillian, or does this feel like? Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I think we need something like this, don't we?
There's the concept of the community center donor recognition wall installation as presented at the meeting of the February 14th, 2024, and authorizes Cornerstone to proceed to design with the final
draft to be reviewed by the committee.
Right. I guess from a process standpoint, is this something that the committee can actually approve, or is this something that has to be thrown up to council for approval?
I
Leave it
think
in the room, but I would say yes, if I'm the one being asked. I think it's part of the.
And to be clear, in this recommendation, we're just asking for the committee to go ahead to approve to move towards design, which would then come back. So
No, but
we're
if council doesn't like it, we don't want to spend the money on the design.
so council needs to approve the concepts.
I think it would be better if council's got to approve at some point, it would be better to approve at this stage than at once the final design's been done.
I would have thought that the committee had the delegated authority to move forward with this, the whole entire project. If we had to bring every element of the project design back to council.
No, it's not. It's yes, it's not that. It's just like a committee recommendation. So like, right, because committees can't direct staff to do anything. Committees don't have their committees of council. I'm not saying it's a big deal. It's a small process piece. Like this would eventually, I think, just end up in a consent agenda at the council level. But just to dot I's and cross T's. But ultimately, I think, even if we just say we're going to proceed to with the final draft at this point, and then that final draft would be thrown in for council oversight.
But Andrew, you don't want council looking at the final draft and starting to tweak it or change it.
And I would hope that given that we have 3 council members on the committee, that wouldn't be an issue. Anyways, I'm okay with this recommendation, but it was just a question about the parliamentary process. So with that, is there a mover for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Liam and Rob. I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. Say aye. Any opposed? And that carries. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And now moving on to 5.1, the Bowen Island Community Center room names. So still with you, Jillian.
Oh, sorry, just 1 second. Just trying to get my screens back to normal. Okay, thank you. So as you know, we have rooms called a large multi-purpose room and a small multi-purpose room, and we have a living room and we have a community conference room and a meeting room. So the time has come where we're starting to work on the signage for the facility. So this is when we have the opportunity to potentially decide on different names that are a little bit more user-friendly. So if you think about sometimes when you go into some of these facilities and they tell you, oh, you're going into the green room, or you're going into the sunset room, or so there's different sort of casual, easy names. So for example, if a kid comes in and they're going to a class, we're going to tell them, you go down to the small multi-purpose room. So this is an opportunity for us to explore the idea of choosing different names for the rooms. So, things like colors are an option. Things like the brand mascots, there's the slug room, the deer room, that's an option. We could look at trees, that's done quite often, using example like the cedar room. So we want to throw that out there and get a feel for what you all think about room names. So thinking again from that user perspective of finding where they're trying to go easily.
You are muted, Councillor Morse.
Yeah. Thinking about, maybe Shelley can help here with this. We're still hoping somebody might want to have the XYZ family room. So the XYZ green room, I don't think is something that's that. Do we have to make this decision now, or can we wait till people have, is this something that has to be done right now, or can we wait till we've absolutely exhausted all possibilities of families or somebody having a room named after them? Because then you're sending them to the X room and the Y room and the Z And I don't know what West Van's got. I can't remember, but I don't remember. I think they were more specific names. Yeah.
Right. Go ahead, Liam.
Councillor Morris, I think, I think now we do need to start thinking about naming the rooms. We're really getting closer and closer to completion, and we would like to have it clearly understood as to what we're calling the different spaces in the absence of having anybody come forward with naming opportunities. If we choose to go with specific names, let's say Cedar or whatever we might call a room, we're happy to change that. If somebody comes forward and is willing to make a pledge that is worthy of naming recognition, more than happy to change that to the Morse room or
Well,
There
forget
you
that.
did it.
so I think like but I think it'd be better to have some names and for us to start with that, because we have to get the signage made. And we're literally at the point where we have to pull the trigger on wayfinding and signage, and so we really need to make these decisions. And if we and I think it would be nicer to have something that was more warm and community based than like the generic names that we currently use.
Right.
Chair, there are some comments by Rob in the chat.
Do we have to decide today or give it thought and decide
We need
shortly?
to decide very soon.
Right.
Maybe not today, but Jillian, do you know?
I don't have an actual date. I know that
Yeah.
they've been pressing us to meet on signage and get moving for some time now.
Who's they?
The architects, so that this can all be manufactured and installed in time.
All right. I see Shelley's hand up and Jamie was waving a hand as well. So we'll go in that order.
Great, thanks. I'll just echo what Liam said. It's usually not a problem to shift a name over should a donor be identified. I will share that I have seen some new capital builds where they'll do some delineation either of floor or size of room by using a different item. So kind of going back to your air, sea, land,
Right.
you may want to consider the smaller rooms are one, the larger rooms are something different, right? Like, so maybe your large multi-purpose room is the ocean space, or like, do you know what I mean? Versus the smaller space might be something that's land-based, maybe that's trees, versus air, which might be bird, just something to consider. So that might help you with delineation of size.
Heron room.
Right. Over to you, Jamie. And then Councillor Beatty.
I just wonder if the large multi-purpose room, if maybe the hearth board can have a say in that, naming that room. Since we're a large partner, especially in that room.
Right.
I think
Not naming it after somebody, but something a little more creative than Arbutus or Cedar.
I liked ocean.
I'd offer that you could go back to the board if you had some name suggestions, pull them up, have that discussion, and then both through you, Jamie and Rob, you can come back to this committee and advance them there.
We can have some guidelines so that we're not like way out on the name, but something that's similar, but I don't know, it would be nice to name that room something creative, since that's where a lot of arts and culture events will happen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Councillor Giddy?
Well, I think that this is the first time, it hasn't come up with the joint management committee, and this is the first time that we've really had a chance to think about this. So, Jamie, I think that take it back to the board and just say this has come up, and this, if you've got any ideas, then start generating them. That'd be fabulous. But in terms of the themes that we just did for the donor wall, if it was, land, air, and sea, You know, it could be all birds in terms of the biggest room is the bald eagle and the littlest room is the chickadee or something like that in terms of, it would be nice to have, and just in terms of wayfinding and signage, it'd be nice to have something that could be easily done into a line drawing, or, you know, wouldn't be difficult to spell, or, and might be really easy to translate if we could figure out a Squamish equivalent. So I think keep it simple. Choose a theme, whether it's trees or birds or sea mammals, and you know, we've just had a whole chorus of sea lions, and you know, I'm sure that we could come up with something that would be quite fun. So this is something that's just come up. Let's give ourselves a deadline, and you know, we have a month to do it, and see whether, I don't know when the next meeting is, but see whether or not we can come to an agreement. Put our creative little in there.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. The idea that comes to my mind, and this, I don't know, might be, maybe it's out there, maybe it's not. I'm thinking of, well, it actually comes from sitting in Artisan Eats, and you know where they give you the signs with the neighborhoods. And given that it's a community center, we focus so much on the people in the community that can happen. I wonder if you took a map of Bowen Island and like just loosely placed it over the blueprints of the community center, and then name the rooms based on like the types of neighbor, like how they would actually fit in there, so that you could have like Blue Water, Snug Cove Theater, like, you know, whatever, and that they're actually names that come from the community and a little less abstract than you know, the sort of natural pieces. Liam?
My only worry with that is ultimately there's 4 rooms that are really like accessible to the public, and then 5 if you think about the living room. And so I would just worry that we might, so if, you know, we've got more than 5 neighborhoods.
Right. Yeah. Well, and obviously not every neighborhood would, you know, or every part of the, or, you know, even if it's landmarks that are on the island or something like that, would bring it a bit more islandy.
Right.
You know, I kind of want to say that I don't think neighborhoods are going to feel left out, and it's not going to blow up, and, you know, if Blue Water doesn't get on there, they're going to form a committee and lobby. And,
yeah. Well,
but
I do,
you know, there's nothing that surprises me anymore at this point. So
yeah, I do like the approach that Councillor Getty had sort of said, like, and I agree, this has come at you with no real advance warning, so we should give a time frame. So let's schedule a month to meet from a month from now, and maybe we can try to put together some categories and options, and then at that next meeting, we all bring back the great ideas that we've come up with, and we aim to nail it down at that meeting. And we'll hold the architects at bay until then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Does that give you enough to go on for now, Jillian?
Yeah. There's some really interesting ideas, so I'm glad we're looking at this. I think it'll be really fun.
Yeah.
I just had one question.
Yep.
Are you going to include a name for the courtyard as well?
Possibly.
So is there a definitive list of how many names you're looking for? Like, is that 5 different names or 6 different names, or
That's
that
part
might
of
help people?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, that'll be part of what we pull together. Next one. Good.
I had been thinking that we had 5 definitive names, and then perhaps 6 or 7 if we were going to name the weight room and the rec room. So now perhaps 8 if we do the courtyard. And
I might suggest to leave you open for people to potentially want to support the various areas. If you give them the distinct spaces, including those courtyards, it might open the door for future donations.
Okay, so moving on to other business. I don't see anything listed in other business. The last item here is moved to a
Does
closed
Judy-
meeting.
sorry.
Oh, sorry, Counselor Getty, do you have your hand up?
Oh, I just wanted the coffee room to be called the Crowbar.
The crowbar? I have an old crowbar I could donate to put on the wall.
In honor of all the builders.
Okay, and then with that, let's can I have a mover for the recommendation to move to a closed meeting? Counselor Getty, seconded by Mayor Leonard. I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye, opposed, and that carries. Information items, question period. I don't see anybody here for question period. Do we have any questions on the line, Steph?
No.
Next meeting, I
Oh, does
see.
Rob have his hand up?
Yep,
I think
Rob,
he
go
was,
ahead.
you think he was seconding.
Oh, seconding, right.
Okay.
Staff has been circulating some dates for the next meeting.
So
It's
not
not-
March 6th for you.
No,
Well, we'd like to bring back the design from Cornerstone at that next meeting in order to stay on the production schedule that they need. So the 6th would be too close, I think,
Oh,
for that.
okay.
So the week after that would be better, or possibly the week after that.
you're just heading into spring break there.
Right.
I don't know who that impacts in this group. Some groups it impacts heavily, some not so much.
I have Islands Trust from the 12th to the 14th.
Okay, can we do maybe the Wednesday, the 20th?
let's come back to this at the end of close, just so we're not doing our scheduling on a live stream.
Okay.
Okay. And with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn. I'm looking at Counselor Getty on my screen, seconded by Liam.